I'm in control physically of what my body's doing, but mentally I'm not in control of whether I drink or not.
Initially, when it is just the default option, it's hard to say, okay, I'm not going to drink. You have to almost sometimes put your foot in the sand and go, no more for now.
Yeah. There's a common perception from event organisers, at least in the space that we operate in, that there's, sort of Gen Z are not drinking as much.
Anyone who doesn't want to drink for that drink, give them a good alternative and you're going to make some money from it. Hi, welcome to The Upward Spiral, a podcast around the surprising joys and profound impact of drinking less. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Daniel O'Connor, a bit of a legend here in Singapore, I think. I've mentioned that I was interviewing Daniel O'Connor to a few friends at the ice bath today, and everyone knew who he was. So a little bit excited about this one. Daniel is co-founder of Offtrack, a very cool bar here in Singapore, Sunda Festival, and also Ice Cream Sundays. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about drinking less, about how inclusive all the events and bars are becoming here in Singapore. And just talking about basically what's cool, because I'm a little bit out of date, not up to date on what's cool here in Singapore. Definitely been hibernating since COVID. Welcome to The Upward Spiral. Thank you so much for coming. We are here today at Podster, Singapore's podcast studio. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. Appreciate it.
So there is so much going on. I already mentioned to you this morning that I read your LinkedIn and I was like, oh my God, this guy is doing so much and all really, really cool things. Just tell me a little bit about some of the projects that you're currently working on.
Yeah, well, I guess it sort of started for me with Ice Cream Sundays. I think that was sort of the gateway to everything else in terms of working in nightlife and entertainment.
So what is Ice Cream Sundays?
So Ice Cream Sundays is like a day to night party. So we started in 2016 as a series of house parties. It was effectively a glorified barbecue at that point. It was actually on a Sunday, which we're not anymore. And it was just really a way for like people our age to be able to go out and enjoy music that they liked in interesting sort of outdoor settings at a price point that was, a bit more affordable than what else was available in the market at the time. We evolved away from doing sort of house parties about a year into the project, and then started taking over kind of predominantly like arts and culture related spaces. So we did a couple at the National Gallery, Gilman Barracks, eventually places like Haw Villa, Deck, which is a now kind of defunct photography gallery. And yeah, it was really about just celebrating music and creativity in unique spaces, and everything kind of opened up from there. Because that obviously was very much a passion project. It still is. It's not my sort of source of income or employment. But in terms of everything else becoming my career, that's kind of where it all started here. I was at the time sort of working in the sports marketing industry. And that was really the kind of basis of my career for the first few years of being back in Singapore. And then Ice Cream Sundays just sort of opened up the floodgates. I started working more in events in a professional capacity, and then obviously evolving to develop a few more projects, some of which you've mentioned, Sunda Festival, which we launched last year, and Offtrack, which we opened 2.5 years ago now.
How was that? So Offtrack, you must have opened that just after COVID.
Yeah, it was kind of at the tail end of COVID. So for the first 3 months that we opened, we were still under some level of restriction. We had to close at 10:30. You couldn't have groups of more than 5. But that was sort of a blessing for us. We had a chance to kind of go through the teething phase in a more kind of restricted capacity, and then we were lucky that 3 months later everything sort of opened up fully. We'd sort of planned for at least 6 in that phase. So yeah, we were very grateful to be able to open our doors fully kind of 3 months in, which I think, a lot of other F&B businesses unfortunately weren't so lucky at the time. And then it's kind of been onwards and upwards since then.
And what's the proposition like? Why should we come to Offtrack?
I think we were just trying to provide something a little bit different. I think a lot of places are seen as either a community space, a bar, or a restaurant. I think what we really wanted to do was create something where all of these pillars were seen as equal. Having a chance for people to play out music that they might not play at another bar or in a club. And where you can get a good cocktail, but you can also come for a full dinner. I think that was really the proposition that we were trying to offer. And I think it's been a big part of why we've been successful so far. Because of the way things are sort of zoned in Singapore, typically you're kind of categorized as one or the other. And I think, we just wanted to get rid of those categories, I think. I think there's plenty of people who see us more as a restaurant than a bar, and vice versa. Some people see us as a music space. So I think that's what's kind of worked in our favor, I think, is, it being what you want it to be. You come for whatever you prefer, whether you're someone who likes to have a nice cocktail, or like a nice hearty meal, or just to enjoy good music on a good sound system.
Let's talk about the music. What kind of music do you play?
We try not to limit the DJs and selectors in terms of categories. Like you can come in one night and you might hear more kind of jazz leaning sounds. The next night you might come in and you might hear someone playing a bit of like liquid drum and bass. And then on a Friday night, typically we lean a bit more to sort of house, disco, funk, sort of high energy, feel good music. So it really depends. We try to be a musically fluid space, and I think that's also important in terms of the different sort of demographics that we reach, and people knowing beforehand, okay, well, I feel like this sound resonates with me, so I'm going to go here on this night.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, I need to get my tired mum ass out. I'm definitely an early to bed, early to rise person. Yeah. So I'm up at 5, but I like to be in bed by 9, and I definitely need to start socialising a little bit more. And but something that might be a little bit more up my street is Sunda Festival. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So Sunda Festival was kind of a natural extension of Ice Cream Sundays, I think. So Ice Cream Sundays is really a party, right? So not everyone necessarily comes to dance, but I think predominantly it's a big outdoor space with a large dance floor, a sort of F&B area and some seating, right? So it's not that if you don't dance, there's nothing to enjoy about it. Some people come just to enjoy the atmosphere, but it is really sort of like a dance music event. Sunda Festival is a little bit broader than that. So we have like a live music stage, for example. We have a lot more activities in terms of workshops, kids programming. It's a festival. It celebrates much more than just dance music. And it was really a chance for us to kind of explore our other interests, in terms of music genres, but also other types of non-music programming. And hopefully that's something that, would resonate with other people. Because, I think we have a specific kind of crowd, I think, that enjoys an Ice Cream Sundays. And I think with Sunda, you see maybe a lot more families. The sort of age gap between the youngest and the oldest is much higher. And I think, we really wanted Sunda to just be a platform where everyone can come and enjoy it. It's also like Ice Cream Sundays has always been in kind of more urban settings. And Sunda's kind of, in relative terms, in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of all the way up in the northwest on a campsite. And that's part of the beauty of it as well. We can have people stay overnight. And then it really becomes a festival experience that feels unique here. I think there have been overnight music events here off the mainland. Yeah. I think that camping festival experience is really what makes it. I grew up, going to festivals in the UK and Australia, and now more recently in the region in Thailand, camping at festivals, and it like being able to immerse yourself in that experience for the whole weekend, I think is something that we felt was missing from the kind of event ecosystem here. It was really challenging running that kind of event in Singapore. for a few different reasons. But yeah, it's something that we want to invest our time into, I think, now moving forward, because I think it's it gave us so much, in terms of the connection and the experience that we had with people through doing the festival. And we're making some changes, I think, to make it a bit more sustainable for us long term. But we're fully committed to building it out.
In my day, I was a festival girl. That was my summer was kind of lined up very much Glastonbury girl. Was devastated to be watching all my friends' pictures from Glastonbury last weekend. But it's definitely something since moving here 10 years ago. There was a few things 10 years ago that, Suffolk Gardens by the Bay and, big festivals then, but it definitely went a bit quieter on that front. Some of the challenges, is it government maybe that are a little bit more hesitant of doing big events like that? What are the big challenges?
Actually, so contrary to popular belief, I get this question all the time about like the red tape in Singapore and how difficult it is to organize the kind of events that I do. I'm of the mind that actually the Singapore government makes it not nearly as difficult as people think. Mm-hmm. I think the challenges for us were really financial. I think just the amount you need to put in to just make a festival like that happen. And obviously we still exist in a fairly niche category, especially Sunda Festival, maybe less so than Ice Cream Sundays. But Sunda Festival still exists in a niche that I think makes it difficult for people to convert. I think we had lots of interest, and I think, we had a decent attendance on the Saturday. Sunday was tough. There's a few different reasons for that. It was more just the financial burden that we took on because we're fully independent from the money that we were sort of accumulating over the years for Ice Cream Sundays. We made a collective decision as a group not to pay ourselves for several years. It wasn't until earlier this year that we paid ourselves anything for what we did for Ice Cream Sundays. So I think, that kind of anxiety of like self-funding a festival, managing your cash flow, those were really the challenges. And then obviously the fact that it's a bit further out, from a health and safety perspective, making sure that we were fully prepared in case anything happened, because it's not like, Ice Cream Sundays were never more than 5 to 10 minutes away from the nearest hospital at Sunda, where we don't have that luxury, right? So it was also, I think the stress really was about making sure that we were fully prepared for any incident. We created a sort of like a playbook on what to do if anything happens, whether it's like encounters with wildlife, someone just falling over.
Of course, immediately snakes.
Yeah.
Like mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we there was a snake at the festival actually, but we were prepared for it.
Was he having a good time?
Yeah, he was having a great time
Until
bopping
you
away to the
removed him.
music. Yeah. So those are the sorts of things that we concern ourselves with, right? And I think especially doing it the first time, in terms of scale, it wasn't much bigger than an Ice Cream Sundays. So it's not so much the number of people, it's just that you're in a different environment, a bigger site where you can see less of what's going on. So you're really relying on other people as well to be your eyes and ears. So I think those things make it really challenging. And, obviously doing it once makes you more comfortable. But, say, for example, if we have hopefully 40-50% more people next year, then that comes with its own new challenges, right? So you constantly have to be thinking about what new challenges are being brought up by the different contexts that you operate in.
So when's it on?
So we're doing a prelude event on the 5th of October. It will be at a space at Hall Park Villa, one that we've never used before. It's never kind of suited an Ice Cream Sundays, so we've always kind of had one eye on it, but looking for the right opportunity. So we're really excited to bring the kind of Sunda experience to that space. And then we'll launch the main festival immediately after that, and that's moved to a long weekend in April, which we're really excited about, and that will be back at the original location at Sarambun Scout Camp.
Can't wait to come to both. I will definitely be there. You recently did an event at Harpar Villa. Was that Harpar Thriller?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I was like obsessed with tracking it all kind of on Insta, and I just loved the community aspect, that you had so many people involved in behind the scenes and kind of making that a reality with this kind of the sets and the artwork, everybody kind of working for free and pitching in to just make it, you know, visually as well as everything else incredible. So look, this is a non-alc podcast, and we've been talking about, you know, these events for a while, but what changes have you seen, you know, over the last few years in people's drinking behaviours?
Yeah, it's hard to say at the events because I think we've been doing it for so long, and it's always been predominantly alcohol-led, right? So we are kind of in that phase now of testing like different non-alcoholic products. So I think you're familiar with Brendan, Bougie Botanicals. We've had them at our last few events. Obviously, they're specialising in sort of kombuchas, herbal teas. At the last event, we were selling kind of non-alcoholic beers for the first time, and then...
How did it do?
Yeah, I think the feedback on the products was really good.
Was it Mash Gang?
Yeah, it was Mash Gang. Yeah, I mean,
right.
I personally love their beers. Yeah. So from a personal perspective, it was great. I think the feedback we got was really good as well. You know, it's clear that we need to build awareness over time that's part of the offering. And I think in terms of, we just also need to try and use these events to understand what people want, right? So for example, I've recently stopped drinking. I'm not sure for how long yet, but it's been 2.5 months. And I'm learning myself, like what I like, what I don't like. And I think we're going through that same process with our audience, right? So, but it's really important to us that that becomes a pillar of our events moving forward. You know, in terms of being inclusive, there's lots of people, like you said earlier in the podcast, who want to enjoy nightlife, who want to enjoy festivals, but maybe are sort of leaning away from drinking, or at least to the same extent that they used to. So whether it's for people who don't drink at all or people who want to drink less, I think it's really important that we cater to that audience as well. Because I know, for example, people who do still drink, who want the option of having a non-alcoholic beer, just, you know, so that, you know, if they can have 5 drinks over the course of a day or 6 drinks, you know, they're still kind of keeping in control. They can alternate between an alcoholic drink and a non-alcoholic drink.
Yeah.
Equally, I know people who just don't drink at all, have never drunk, or have decided to stop drinking. There's lots of different reasons for us to have those products available to people.
I saw some data, I think it was from Amanda from Naughty, and of people who are drinking non-alcoholic drinks, 15% are complete abstainers. Yeah. 85% still drink alcohol. Yeah. I think you've got something like 30% were people who were trialers, who were trying non-alcs. You had kind of a 30, I'm going to get my maths all messed up now, but you had something like 30% were people who wanted to kind of mix. Yeah. So maybe have like, you know, start with an alcoholic and then move on to non-alc, and maybe they wanted to kind of mix and match throughout the night. And then you had people who were just not drinking on that one occasion, but maybe wanted to drink the next night, or would drink on weekends but not during the week, or for whatever reason didn't want to drink on that specific occasion. Yeah. And I think you just kind of touched on it there, is, you know, having the non-alc options, not just for the people who aren't drinking, but for the people who are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing, I mean, if there's any event organizers who watch this, like, I think the point is, okay, I mean, if, you know, I think for us, we resonate with the inclusivity aspect of it. And I think that's ultimately the motivation to provide choice for people. But, you know, for any event organizers who have any doubts about that being a strong enough reason, it's like, I use the example of like the Sunday at Sunda Festival. You know, I think we've been very honest when we've interviewed publicly about the event, that we lost a lot of money at the festival, and the main reason for that was a Sunday. So you have less attendance because a lot of people are worried about going to work on Monday, but also your bar sales are affected heavily by the fact that people don't drink as much on a Sunday. For us, it was like, you know, in hindsight, providing more of that choice sooner could have helped us as event organizers. And I think we just weren't in that headspace at the time. I think it didn't really come across our radar. I think it's only really in the last like 6 months that we've been having a lot more conversations with people in and around nightlife, and understanding what people want. So for example, at the bar, right, like we serve mocktails, right? So, but we understand now that actually a lot of people who don't drink, I think there is a correlation between people who decide not to drink and people who want to be a bit more health conscious. So if you're replacing alcohol with sugar, that's not what people want, right? And I think it's only like we're trying to navigate that now. Like we've got that understanding and we're figuring out, okay, well, what do people want? And, you know, what's the best way for us to provide that, whether as an event organizer or as a venue.
Totally. Like money is being left on the table by not having good quality non-alc options.
Yeah.
And I definitely fit in that camp. Like I am really health conscious. I get up at 5 a.m. to go and train. And, you know, if there is not a good quality non-alc, I'm having a water.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm fine with tap water.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're not making any money from me. I don't want a sugary cocktail. I don't drink sodas.
Yeah.
I don't want anything that's got loads of caffeine in it and loads of sugar.
Yeah.
A lot of the non-alc alternatives are low in sugar, low in calories, don't contain caffeine.
Yeah.
So they're a really, really great option. And the other thing is, if there isn't a good option, I'm dragging my husband home, you know, after the main course, you know, or after dessert, because I don't want to sit there while he nurses a bottle of wine if I'm just drinking water.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I've got a couple of non-alc wines to choose from or beers or, you know, spirits, then I'll sit and I'll join him for much longer.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, there's definitely still like this hesitancy in the hospitality industry of, you know, oh, well, we've got a soda or we've got a mocktail, and it's not, you're leaving money on the table. And also it's just, it's not good enough anymore, you know, for those people who, again, stop thinking about it's just the people who aren't drinking, the abstainers. It's, you know, anyone who doesn't want to drink for that drink. Give them a good alternative and you're going to make some money from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I speak on behalf of everyone, but like who doesn't drink. But for me, I think some of the hesitancy from what I've heard from people in the hospitality industry is that like, oh, but then you, like people expect the products to be cheap. Right, so like because there's no alcohol in it, because people associate the price difference with the alcohol tax. I don't know. I mean, personally, whether it's here or like, so I mean, my partner's from Melbourne, and every time I go there, a lot of the bars there have like 2 or 3 non-alcoholic beers on tap, and the price difference is $1, and I've never had an issue with that because I don't. You know, I see it as that I'm paying for the experience that I'm having. And also, I guess, I mean, maybe just having a bit of like knowledge of how it's brewed. I understand that basically it's gone through the same process, right? And in the case of non-alcoholic beers, it's often brewed the same way, and then, you know, the alcohol sort of extracted out, I think, at least for the non-commercial ones. So to me, it's like, I think I've always accepted that, you know, that the price difference isn't going to be much, if anything. And so I'm personally okay with that as someone who doesn't drink. I don't know if that's always the case, but I just think if you don't at least give people a choice, then you'll never really know, right? So
I think there's the whole kind of non-alc industry has got, you know, a collective job to be done in terms of kind of educating consumers on the product and the quality of the product. And I think it's like anything, you kind of get what you pay for. Like you can still get really cheap non-alcoholic wines, but when they're either kind of grape juice or they're really bad wine that's been de-alcoholized and they've had to load it up with sugar to make it taste decent. So, you know, you are kind of, and I think that's kind of what was happening with like the non-alc wines a few years ago, is that they were just very, very, very sweet and tasted like a kind of grape juice. But now you can get really, really beautiful non-alc wines, but you have to start with a good wine to begin with. So you're going through the process of creating a really beautiful, great wine, and then you're having to de-alcoholize it. So, you know, there's more kind of craft and work that's gone into it. That's why it's a little bit more expensive or the same price. And I think, you know, a lot of brands are doing a great job on educating consumers on that, but it's taking it's taking a little bit of time. And I think consumers as well, you know, your reasons for not drinking, and maybe if you're not drinking on that particular day or that particular occasion, or maybe if you're not drinking because you're trying to save money, then okay, a non-alc option might not be the right thing for you. That's when you maybe have a soda or a water or whatever. And age groups, like who are you seeing in the bar not drinking?
it's actually interesting because I mean I think everyone knows that sort of the younger generation are not drinking as much. But in terms of like my personal experience of seeing people not drink, actually there's a lot of people who are kind of in their like late 30s to 50. In terms of the people I know for sure who are coming and not drinking. So yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really noticed it being more specific to a certain age category.
Yeah.
I think at events, there's a common perception from event organizers, at least in the space that we operate in, that there's, sort of Gen Z are not drinking as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting challenge for us. I mean, I think so far our like age demographic at the events has been more in the sort of like 25 to 35 age range. But we are seeing a few younger people. We offer like student concession tickets and things like that. So we have seen some younger people coming through recently. And I think there are changing habits, and we're still learning about what people like. And I think that's why at the last event, it was really important for us to put, 3 or 4 different non-alcoholic categories on the menu rather than just having bougie botanicals there.
Yeah.
It's really like a good way for us to just measure like what are people responding more to. And it's really interesting as well because with Bougie Botanicals, they've been there for 4 or 5 events now. And we've seen their sales grow at our events over that time. And I think, some of their observations, because I think our assumption was that, the kind of drinks that he's serving, like kombuchas, herbal teas, I think our original assumption was, really nice products. Like we love them and we love his brand. Will people have more than one of those? And I think the answer to that question now is yes. Like he's seen a lot of repeat customers coming back during the events who might have 2 or 3 of his drinks. And that will only grow obviously as he's releasing like more and more products as well. So that's been really interesting for us. I think it's as much about confirming, almost like validating what we think, and also debunking things that we thought were true, right?
I was at a party not so long ago, and Bougie Botanical, they had a couple of canisters or whatever you want to call them, of Bougie Botanicals. One I think was kind of the calming, and one that was a bit more kind of energy. And they just sold out. They were gone, really, really quickly. And this party was very cool. I definitely shouldn't have been there. But it was amazing. And I was so happy that kind of the non-alcs were the first things to go, actually. And the non-alc beers as well were the first things to completely have gone.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting we're providing choice, but so a lot of the partners that we're working with, they're coming at it from the perspective of like, we want to give non-drinkers choice and a good product, right? I think what's really interesting about Bougie Botanicals is that they're now also making products that they're thinking about how it fits into a party or festival experience, which I think is a really interesting approach. So, for example, they've got the energizing blue elixir. I think you just referred to that. Yeah. And I love it because, like, when I was at the event, like, I'd have a couple of those when I needed, like, a bit of a boost. Like, I'm working, entertaining, also trying to enjoy the event as a punter when I get those moments. So... yeah, for me, it's really cool to have a product that not only satisfies me as a non-drinker, but also elevates my energy, my mood in that setting. And so I think that was a really interesting approach, I think, to making drinks for nightlife.
And that's really interesting, is that what we're seeing kind of the US and the UK and other places around the world is that you're getting kind of these non-alc drinks that do make you feel something, whether they're like CBD infused or whatever, adaptogens, mushrooms, and various kind of other things. We're quite limited in Singapore on what we what we're going to be allowed, what we're going to be allowed to kind of break what's going to be allowed to come to market here. But it is, I think that's it. I don't want to feel intoxicated. I don't want to have the negative effects of the alcohol, particularly the next day. Like my hangovers are dreadful, but it would be quite nice to feel a little bit of something.
Yeah, for sure. And I also come at it from, I don't drink caffeine.
Yeah,
so
same.
The double whammy of not drinking caffeine or alcohol.
Why do you not drink caffeine? I've got to ask.
I don't know. I never got into coffee. It wasn't a conscious choice, actually. It wasn't like I used to drink it and I stopped or anything like that. But obviously from not drinking it from an early age, when I did try and drink caffeine, I just found myself being like really sensitive to it. So
Same. Little palpitations, bit of anxiety. And I think half the issues with my hangovers were actually caffeine come downs as well. Like, if you were ever on a night out having a few Jaeger bombs, maybe like a vodka Red Bull, something like that. Oh, Jesus. Like, I think my body just wasn't used to ever having that caffeine, and therefore, got the shakes.
So I think, it's just sort of that product kind of ticked 2 boxes for me. And I think, it's going to be really interesting, I think, to see over the next like 6 to 12 months what else comes up in the market, right? I think the rest of this year, I think, is going to be really like a learning process for us. I think we'll have a much better understanding then of, what people want in this category.
I'm really excited to come to these events and to actually just be able to feel like a little bit kind of more included. I think just being able to kind of have the prop or the crutch or, just enjoy a drink that tastes like alcohol without the negative effects and be in that environment. I think there's definitely a placebo effect from them for sure. I've definitely felt that, where I felt almost kind of like a little bit high, even though it just isn't possible. So, I think that's great. And, for those kind of for Sunda Festival as well, like that Sunday kind of being able to like sit and still kind of enjoy having a beer without the alcohol whilst kind of listening to the music and not, being able to get up for work on Monday is going to be amazing. So no, it's going to be really good. Tell me a little bit about your story. So why are you laying off the booze at the moment?
I think for me, it was just, I came back from a holiday in Japan. I was there for like 3.5 weeks, which was amazing. Before that, I'd had a couple of my own events, and it was like my birthday. So I think for a period of like two months, I drank almost every day. I think I probably count on one hand how many times I didn't. I think you just have like a light bulb moment, like it wasn't planned. And in terms of like how long it's gone on for, that hasn't been planned either. I think it's really about clearing small hurdles and seeing how far you can go. I'm obviously not anti-alcohol. I run events where we sell alcohol. I own a bar. I think for me, it's just about trying to find that balance, whatever that is for you. For some people, I think finding that balance is stopping totally, and I really respect that. And I think I'm still figuring out where that balance lies for me personally. But I think what I was finding was that I was often doing like sort of 2 weeks off or like 4 weeks off, but then in reality I was very quickly falling back into a pattern of drinking, like 5-6 times a week. I think I wouldn't say there's a lot of pressure in my industry. Like I actually feel that a bit more social pressure from the people I hang out with, like more generally than with industry people. But obviously being part of an industry where it's very prevalent does make it difficult. So I think that pressure comes less from the people and more just the environments that you're in. And I just felt, at that point 2.5 months ago when I decided to see how far I could go, I just think for me, I was like, okay, well, I need to prove to myself that I can do more than a month, because I've done that before. And I need to prove that, if I ever feel that my balance is somewhere in between, that I can stick to it, So, but for me, the easiest way to do that is to show that, I can go several months without needing it, and that if I ever felt that there was a need to do that again, I could, and that almost having that like proof case for myself. So that's been really important. And I think it's also like everyone has different warning signs. I think I didn't have like a health scare or anything like that, but I think there was a disconnect between how people were perceiving me when I was drinking and how I was perceiving the way I was feeling. So for example, like I'm not the most extroverted person in the world. So when I do get drunk, it doesn't show externally. And a lot of people think, oh, Dan never gets drunk. And I was like, I see, the way I perceive it is that I'm drunk way too often, you know, like I'm drunk like 4 times a week at least. I guess I was almost getting that validation that I was like, oh, I don't have an issue with it, whatever. I'm in control of it. But yeah, when I took a step back after coming back from that long trip, I was drinking every day. I think it was like, yeah, okay. I think control to me means something different, which is like, you know, what's your optimal balance with drinking or not drinking, right? And I think previous to this, it would have been like, I'd love if I could only drink once a week. You know, I enjoy a few drinks, maybe have a big night, but the rest of the time I'm good. And control to me is being able to just live out what your ideal vision of, you know, being a drinker is. And I wasn't able to do that. Like I was drinking, you know, 4, 5, 6 times a week. So in that sense, I wasn't in control. The external perception from friends, because I think when I made that choice to stop, I was like, I messaged 3 or 4 of my friends that I would usually drink heavily with. And I said, hey guys, like I'm making a choice, and I really hope that you can just like respect it, not put any pressure on me to drink. And I think, you know, one of them messaged me back saying like, hey, totally respect your choice. And, but just for what it's worth, like from the outside, it seems like you're totally in control. Yeah. And I was like, because I'm not like stumbling out onto the road, and, you know, like I'm in control physically of what my body's doing, but mentally I'm not in control of whether I drink or not. So I think there's differences in how people perceive like problem levels of drinking. And I just think that, I sort of crossed over a line, I think, for me, that I needed to prove to myself that I could regain that control.
That's so often it's just the default option as well, and it's like so often it's just habit. It's like you meet somebody for a drink, you go to a bar, and you automatically write a glass of white wine or beer or whatever, and you just need to be a bit more mindful, like, and have that kind of thought of, actually, no, I'm going to choose an alternative. Once you start kind of choosing an alternative and making those decisions, the easier it gets. But initially, when it is just the default option, it's hard to say, okay, I'm not going to drink. You have to almost sometimes put your foot in the sand and go, right, draw the line in the sand and go, okay, no more for now. And then maybe we'll come back to it later. It won't be the default option. Anymore.
Exactly.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, good. I think the biggest thing, I've done, you know, like short breaks before, as I mentioned, so like I'm aware of the sort of physical benefits that you feel in that time. I think the main thing, I think everyone knows, right? Like you sleep better, obviously you don't have the hangover and all that kind of stuff. I think we know that those benefits come with not drinking. I think the biggest thing for me is like doing so many different things while still also wanting to find time to socialize, be a good partner, present with my family. My family lives here, so I try and spend a good amount of time with them as well. Trying to juggle all those things. I feel like the biggest thing I got was my time back, and which is interesting because I still socialize, right? Like I don't avoid going to bars. I love the energy and atmosphere of a bar. So I haven't deprived myself of those social experiences, but somehow I still feel like I've just claimed loads of time back. Last year especially, I think we, doing Sunda for the first time and all the work that comes with that on top of everything else, it was like constantly felt like I was like, just trying to eke like every single minute out of a day in terms of like, so I was working day to night and it just wasn't sustainable, like you can do all these fun things and like they fulfill something in me in terms of my passion for music and events and stuff, but if you're not getting that balance right in terms of like work-life balance, then it becomes something like a negative experience, right? So I think as you go longer not drinking or drinking less, I think you start to feel that like, oh, somehow I've got time back even though I'm not doing anything else necessarily that differently.
I stopped drinking kind of around the time I was training for Singapore Marathon. I was working at Disney and I was doing the launches for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And we had kind of back-to-back launches of like Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines, and and then I got 2 young kids at home, at the time they were like 1 and 3, and then still kind of wanting to obviously kind of maintain my relationship and, friendships and everything else and family abroad, travel. And I was like, I cannot do all of these things. Something's got to give. And it was just incredible, actually, just giving up alcohol, how much time that gave me back my health as well. Like I was far less anxious. I was able to cope with like the stress at work so much better. I was getting sick a lot less. Like I was always constantly picking up bugs and run down and feeling a little bit kind of on the edge of burnout. And all of that went away. And I think, but a lot of people talk about, your sleep and your skin and, your weight and everything else, but actually there were a lot of kind of other benefits of, being able to manage all of these different things that I had going on, but also actually enjoy them a lot more as well, not feeling less overwhelmed with it all. I also really like how you talked around just no rules, like not setting yourself an end date. And I'm a big fan of this on the podcast. Not everyone that I talk to is abstaining from alcohol completely. And I think, if for anyone listening, having, the thought of abstaining completely just feels too much, or feels like you're not going to be able to connect socially, or it doesn't have to be like that. There are many ways that you can drink less without having, and have the benefits of that without having to kind of give up completely. And I think it's really important that, to know that you're in control and you're able to set the rules. Like you'll know when enough is enough. You'll know when it's time to have a break. And you'll know when it's time to come back to it, or if it's ever time to come back to it.
For a long time I was also vegetarian, and
we've got so much in common.
And I think so I think in both categories, it's just like I sort of encourage people to try what's out there. I think certain categories of non-alcoholic products are quite mature already, a lot more so than maybe people think. And there's really good options out there. I think obviously some still have a way to go. I compare that to my experience being a vegetarian. It's like, there were some products out there that I absolutely loved, and they satiated something in me that that maybe was missing from making that change. And then obviously there's other products where you're like, okay, it's not quite there yet. But I think that kind of that mindset of like exploring the different options, I think, you will get surprised about what is out there. And what can help sort of fill that gap.
I've got to ask, why did you start eating meat again?
I don't eat all meats. I think, again, it was like, so I always come back to that thing of like balance, right? So I was always trying to find the right balance for me. So I first started as a weekday vegetarian, so Monday to Friday. And then on the weekends, I'd sort of eat whatever I wanted. And then I went fully vegetarian, and then pescatarian, vegetarian. And now it's like, I do eat certain types of seafood again, and occasionally chicken. So it's like, I think it's just finding that balance of like being realistic with what your body wants and needs, but trying to obviously stick to a balance that also makes you feel like you're living out your principles, and it's tricky. I don't know. I mean, what I'm doing now will change again for sure. It will keep evolving. It wasn't a particular moment, although it started when I spent 6 weeks in Thailand at the beginning of the year, and that was kind of when it started again. So I think, maybe it was just a product of being in that environment where, I think when you're in your home country or like where you live, you sort of get into a routine of like, okay, well, this is where I know I can go for this and that. And then I think when you're taken out of that, you're like, well, okay.
I actually found that coming to Singapore. Like before moving here, I was vegetarian. And then going from being a vegetarian in London, where you've just got phenomenal options absolutely everywhere. 10 years ago in Singapore, it was a bit more difficult. Like there was not like salad stop didn't exist. Like there wasn't anywhere to get like a good salad. It was kind of hawker food, and even that I just really struggled. And then kind of mixed and matched and whatever, and then eventually got pregnant and needed the iron. Needed the energy and the fuel and the protein. And everything else. But just kind of funny that we've been on similar paths with that, obviously minus the pregnancy for you. Unless there's something you want to tell me. What like advice would you give to people? So I think before the podcast started, we talked a little bit about anxiety people might feel, like who are questioning or reevaluating their relationship with alcohol, who know that alcohol's maybe not serving them anymore, but they love to party. Like they love to go to kind of events, festivals. They love the music, the environment, and the connection that happens there, the energy, and are just scared that if they stop drinking, it's not going to be the same. They're not going to feel it. They're not going to enjoy it. They're not going to be accepted or included. What's your advice for any people who might be feeling that?
I think, for me, the first 2 weeks was the most difficult because you're putting yourself back into the same environments where you'd be used to drinking. And you're like, I don't know, I was so fidgety, didn't know what to do with my hands. I was like tapping my feet a lot. I think my advice would just be, just throw yourself into all the same situations and like, just let that kind of discomfort like come over you, because it will go eventually, I think the worst thing you can do is deprive yourself of the social experiences that you want to have, because then you'll associate that with not drinking in it, and that creates a negative mental cycle, and it becomes a lot harder to sustain. I think, I think you can encourage event organizers, venues that you like to go and hang out with, to offer more choice, because I think the more that people hear these sorts of cases where people want these kinds of products, I think that's going to be a message to the organizer, to the venue owner, that okay, this is a market that we need to cater to, right? So, I think it's really about just putting yourself in those situations. Like it's the same principles as like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? It's like just put yourself in the uncomfortable situation, and trust yourself to respond to it. It's, I think in a festival atmosphere, obviously there are certain kinds of festivals that I think are more difficult to enjoy than others. So I think it's also about choosing the right ones, right? So, a Zookout versus a Sunda festival is going to feel different as a non-drinker. And I think, just doing your research on what the non-music programming is, what music programming you think you're going to enjoy in that mindset. I think those are all important things, but ultimately it's something that comes from within, right? And I think if you don't put yourself in that situation and force yourself through it, then you're not going to come out the other side and kind of find that path to enjoying these environments without alcohol.
I think that's just such good advice.
Yeah.
I failed at every single dry January I ever tried before quitting alcohol. And I think it was always coming from this place of like deprivation. It was like, right, I've drank loads over Christmas. I'm going to not drink for a month. I'm going to stay in. I'm going to not socialize. I'm going to save some money. I'm going to, and it was willpower and deprivation. And it was like depriving yourself of a good time.
Yeah.
And that's why I always failed. Because, even if I got I think the longest I ever did was like to the 27th or something.
Yeah.
But then there was just some event on and I was like, I have to go. And, I think starting from that place of depriving yourself and is worse than just the discomfort that you're going to feel going.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to add to what I said, I think telling your... I feel like the fact that I told a few of my friends that this was the decision I was making for myself, like, I think it's much easier if you preempt people that you would go to these events with. I think the message resonates with them much quicker, because I think if you go to the event or the festival or the bar or whatever environment you might be in where everyone's drinking, and you go, I'm not drinking today, you're going to get loads more questions back.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you preempt people and you say, look, I'm making a decision for myself, I hope you'll respect it, then I just found there was like zero pushback.
I also think people are changing as well.
Yeah.
Like people are being loads more respectful of it. People are becoming a little bit more aware of that now, and are just saying, okay, you know what, no.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that. I'm not going to react to that. So a lot more people are actually, I get a lot more questions now than questions from a positive standpoint, not, oh, why are you not drinking? Don't be so boring, just have one. More, okay, that's really interesting. Tell me more. I want to drink less. How are you doing it? What are you drinking instead?
Whether you're not drinking at all, whether you're taking a short break, whether you're just having one day where you just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
So I think with friends, it's very easy to just be like upfront and just be like, okay, look guys, I'm not going to drink for X amount of time. I think with for example, working in the bar industry, right? I think like you meet a lot of people who like, for whom I think that would be seen as maybe like a little bit different, shall we say? Yeah. But I found with people that I don't know very well, even if I haven't decided to stop drinking forever, I haven't made that decision yet, seeing how it goes. But I just tell people I don't drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, what does it matter to them whether whether it's for 3 months or for a year or forever? Yeah. You know, it's just the easiest way to like nip that in the bud. Because I think if you go like, I'm not drinking today. Yeah. I think if that's the line that you lead with, you're always going to get a little bit of like
for sure
pushback. And obviously it's your responsibility to stand your ground on those sorts of things. But I just think the easiest way is to be like, I don't.
Yeah, for sure. Like for the first year, I never actually said those words, no, I don't drink. Yeah. I gave an excuse, and I had a list of excuses in my pocket. For the first 6 months, it was while I'm training for the marathon, which people generally accepted, you know, especially if I was like, I've got to get up and run 20K in the morning, so I'm not drinking. People would be like, okay, yeah, fine, fair enough. Yeah. But then I'd be like, oh, I'm on antibiotics, my tummy's not good, oh, the kids have been sick, I'm going to be up with the kids in the night. Like, I would literally kind of reel off any excuse that I could think of. Yeah. And it is funny, like some excuses people just accepted, and other times people would be like, oh, you can still have one, you'll be okay. Yeah. You know, or if I was like, I'm driving, people would be like, oh, you can still have one. And I'm like, no, I don't drink and drive. And then when you say that to someone goes, okay, yeah, fine. Yeah. But then it wasn't until kind of hitting kind of that year mark that I was like, no, I'm done. Yeah. I was like, no, I don't drink. And I don't drink anymore, because that opens up questions, or I'm not drinking tonight opens up questions. It just, I don't drink. Yeah. And people go, oh, right, okay. And it is the best thing that you can say to somebody. Yeah. No, I don't drink. Yeah. Because people just go, oh, right, okay. Yeah. They just accept it. Another couple of kind of tips for anyone who might want to come to your events. Yeah. So, and you know, who don't want to drink, like you said, text your friends, let everyone know maybe that you're not drinking. Yeah. Take a look at the drinks menus, maybe some of the brands that are going to be there. Yeah. Hopefully some of the events have got some great non-alc alternatives, like you had a Mash Gang at your last one. Yeah. Wear comfy shoes. And this is one for the girls. Don't go out in heels. Yeah. And I learned this the hard way, is like, I went out in heels. When you don't have your beer jacket on, or your feet, like whatever it is, like numbing your feet, it's just painful. And I remember kind of lasting an hour, because all I could think about was how much my feet were hurting. Yeah. So ever since then, I'm like, I'm going out in trainers, and that's it. Like, I don't care if it ruins the outfit, just wear comfy shoes. Yeah. Because that way you can get up, you can dance, you just feel really comfortable, and you probably look cooler anyway. And then music. Music is like such a big thing, and something that I really found that if there's somewhere where it's like the music is just great, like I know the songs, like, or just they've just got a great beat, and I will get up and dance. Like I thought I could never dance without a drink. Like I just thought I would always need to drink to be able to bance. And that's just been one of the biggest joys and biggest surprises in the sobriety, is like, if the music's good, I'm getting up there regardless. Yeah, yeah. And that kind of ties into making sure you've got good shoes on, comfy shoes on. And And kind of the energy of the place as well, make sure that you're going with, or there's going to be a good crowd there. People who are going to be on the same wavelength, who are going to want to dance, who are going to want to kind of keep things interesting. Because ultimately at a long event, you don't want to be kind of sat talking to drunk people all night. Get moving, and you'll really enjoy it. Anything else? Any other kind of tips or advice?
No, I think that's it really. I think it's just try what's out there. And I think be direct with people. That's what's something. I mean, I've been on that journey for like a much shorter time, but I think that's what's helped so far. I think you also just like, I think chatting with anyone who's on a similar path, I think really helps. Like for me it was chatting to Chris from Wild Pearl at the very beginning and just being like, what's worked for you, what hasn't. Super helpful. I think I think it's really important to just to tap into what other people have experienced.
I've got one question for you actually. How do you do the late nights without the booze?
I mean, I organise Ice Cream Sundays is a date, and we end at 10:30, so it's okay. Sunda goes till 4 a.m. And next year it will go till 4 a.m. 2 nights in a row. So it can be tricky, but I don't do that many of them. Even the bar closes like 12 or 1 depending on the night. So I try and avoid them as much as possible, but obviously it's inevitable that there's a few events a year where I have to stay up till 4 or 5. I think for me, I actually find that it's a bit easier to stay up without drinking. I think alcohol, when you do drink on those late nights, I think up to a certain point it gives you more energy, and then very quickly you can start crashing, right? So I actually haven't found it an issue staying up late when I've had to work like late night events. I've even been out as a punter to a club until like 4 a.m. without drinking, and which I often don't do. Well, like when I am drinking, I often like have to call it a night, like 2:30. Like my body's just like, no. So the key for me is just to stay on my feet and move around. It's like, the second I start sort of sitting down, or like having a quick lie down, it's like game over, I think. So, I don't actually feel like the alcohol was helping me stay up.
I think just one kind of last thing, we talked a little bit earlier kind of about milestones as well. And definitely something that I've found is that the longer you go without alcohol and the more of these, what I kind of call milestones happens, at the easier they get. So, I had my sister's bachelorette weekend in Manchester and managed to do that alcohol free. Then I had her wedding and, holidays, girls' trips, weekends away, boat parties. The more that you do, the easier it gets, for sure. You've got a couple of big ones coming up, right?
So next week I've got like a regional bar industry event in Hong Kong, which will be interesting. I think obviously it's going to be basically a collection of some of the best bartenders all across Asia making great cocktails. I think you clear each hurdle as it comes. It's not that I haven't had any for the 2.5 months so far, so you've just got to some are a bit bigger than others, and then after that I've got probably like 6 or 7 weeks where I don't really have anything that I think would be too challenging. Then I got one of my best friend's weddings in early September. It's just setting these, like, you just keep moving the goalposts, right? It's like, just make it to this one first and then, get through that, then get to the next one. I think that's the approach that I've taken. I mean, I have been a smoker at various times in my life, and I found that was the best approach for sustained results. So it's taking kind of the same approach with this one.
It's not just about getting through the events either. It's about actually enjoying them. And that was what always really surprised me. I think I approached it as, oh God, I just need to get through this like bachelorette weekend without drinking. But I went and actually had a brilliant time. And again, I was kind of last one standing, 3:30 in the morning, scooping up all the girls, taking them for a kebab and, you know, getting everyone home. And it was, you know, it was a surprise to me. I was like, oh, I didn't just get through the weekend. I actually had a brilliant time.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the more you do that, the more you're like, okay, this is cool. I can do this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Of all the non-alc drinks that you've tried, what are your favourites?
I love the Mash Gang beers. Yeah. I mean, when I have been drinking alcohol, like I'm probably drink 90% beer.
Yeah.
Not much of anything else. So, so I've kind of leaned heavily into that category. I think there are tons of good like pale ales from Australian breweries, especially.
Yeah.
That I've been kind of ordering to home. But yeah, Mash Gang was really good. Had them at the last event. Hopefully keen to keep stocking them at the next few events as well.
Yeah.
They got a couple with the Chug, which is like the XPA.
Yeah.
Really cool branding as well, which kind of is quite similar in colours to our brand.
Skeletons on the all kind of on the things, yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I just think the quality of some of those products have gotten so good now that, you know, at least from a taste perspective, I don't really have any, like I don't miss it at all. So I just try and make a point of having, you know, some at home, because I still think there's a lot of venues that don't have a sort of non-alcoholic beer option at the moment.
If you go to Free Spirit's website, they've got a map on their website of all the places that they sell to, they stock. And so it's actually awesome now to kind of see this map growing, week by week, of all the places in Singapore that stock their non-alc. And I think because Emma and Beck, they curate everything, they taste everything, and so most of the products they've got on there are brilliant. Yeah. So you know that you're kind of going to get a high quality non-alc alternative. Okay.
That's cool. Yeah, because I actually met them last week.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize they had this map because I've Google searched a few times like where to find this stuff, and there's like nothing online.
Check out the website, it's good. They've both been on the podcast. Yeah. So it's good if ever you're like, oh, I want to go out, but I'm not really sure. Yeah. Definitely check them out. A couple of my other favourite places, if it were, again, not for beers, but if you like cocktails, the Dandy Collection, so Ferengi Superstar and Neon Pigeon. So their menu's brilliant because they've got foolproof, half-proof, zero-proof, and it's not non-alc shoved at the back of the menu. It's completely integrated, very inclusive. Yeah. And they just get the viscosity right on their cocktails. Yeah. So you're not kind of getting anything that just tastes too watery. They taste as if they've got alcohol in them. It just is mind-blowing. And so you're seeing kind of a lot now of the, mixologists really creating things that are actually very special. Yeah. So at your event next week in Hong Kong, you need to start testing some of the bartenders. Yeah. And that's going to be the test for them, like how good are you of a mixologist? Can you create a non-alc alternative that you just wouldn't know whether it's got alcohol in or not? And one of the tests for that is definitely the viscosity, making sure it's got the right thickness to it almost, that an alcoholic version would have. So let me know if you come back with anyone's amazing, any recommendations. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank
you for having me
on the podcast today. I've loved talking to you. I'm so excited about all of the up and coming events.
Thank you.
Now I am back in town. No trips planned for the next 6 months. So you'll definitely be seeing more of me. Cool. I'm going to link to all of them below. So please send me all the links and I'll make sure kind of add to everything below to anyone who's still listening. Please check out kind of Daniel's bar, all your events. I'll put your LinkedIn on there because you're also an events consultant as well. So if anyone needs any help with any events, please reach out to Daniel. And then for anyone else still listening, thank you so much. I'm still trying to kind of build a community of anyone who just wants to drink less, anyone who is sober curious. Please let me know what you think. If there's anyone that I should talk to, any comments that you have, any improvements, I'm all ears. Thank you so much, Daniel and everyone. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate to have like such a talented creative team that helps us. You know, we have a couple in our team who sort of lead that creative process, but then we get a lot of help from, from people who are friends, family. I mean, my sister's very involved in the set design as well. Friends of friends who come down and help. And I think it's really a labor of love. A lot of the things that we put into our sets, we build from scratch. We try and reuse as much material as we can from previous events, or collecting materials from people who are not using them. And it's all part of the process. I mean, that's the most fun part of the process. I think like we love the day before the event when we set up and we see everything come together, because, you know, usually we've been talking about it for 6 weeks, like what the set's going to be like, how it's going to look, and we do little mock-ups of how it's going to look, but until you see it in person, it doesn't quite feel real. You're never sure exactly how it's going to come together. So yeah, I think that sort of creative process, seeing it go from idea to reality, is really what we love about doing the events.
But I think the whole thing is just a labour of love, right? And that's you can see that in the work that you do, and also why it's so successful, right? You're not at this point doing this to make you millionaires. You're doing this because it brings so much joy to yourselves and other people.
I think that's the consist, because we do several different projects, right? So it's like we actually had a sort of brand strategy meeting like a couple of weeks ago, and we were trying to think about like what's the common, because they're all different events, you know, the look and feel of them, the programming. But yeah, ultimately I think it's what you said. It's like the common thread is that we try and bring joy to people through music and live experiences, and I think that's a big part of that is, you know, all the kind of on the ground work that goes into making everything look pretty,